The history of the Rebel series is only now coming together. In 1950, Paul decided or realized that he was not going to make a living selling $500 loudspeakers. So he sucked up his engineering pride and he designed the Rebel. This is a Rebel 1, and it is the only one we have. We have most of it. It had a fairly complicated geometry inside the cabinet. The horn actually started inside before it exited at the back. He quickly came to the realization of a Rebel 2, which had no horn inside the cabinet. It only had a slot at the back. The slot at the back acted as an acoustic inductor. This actually worked better than the Rebel 1. Then it evolved to the Rebel 3. This particular Rebel 3, we have modified it so that you can see the components. This one was sold as a kit, and this is probably one of the more elaborate complements of drivers. It has a double-barrel tweeter from University, a University mid-range, and a University 15-inch woofer that has a 4-inch voice coil and dual windings for different impedances. Then, in the mid-50s, Paul was flying everywhere to his dealers, and he needed a speaker to fit in the back seat of his Stinson Voyager airplane. So he designed the Rebel 4. He was then able to take the Rebel 4 in his airplane along with his own homegrown stereo tapes, take it to a dealer who would have a mono Klipschorn on display, and he could demonstrate stereo several years before you could buy a stereo LP. As we move on, the Rebel 5 became significantly smaller. This, I believe, is a prototype for the Rebel 5 series. The Rebel 6, I'm not really clear on. The Rebel 6 might have also been the Shorthorn. That requires more investigation. Finally, we have a Rebel 7 prototype, and obviously they clearly got smaller with time. In the mid-50s, Paul designed the Shorthorn. This is a very typical Shorthorn Model S. Many of these were also sold in kit form through Cabinart. Then he designed a different version, the Model T, and this one was to put your television on top of. It could be the world's first video monitor. The Heresy was designed in 1957 to be a center channel between two Klipschorns. This type of system was actually taken to the Brussels World's Fair of 1958, and then later to the Moscow exhibition behind the Iron Curtain. In those days, Don Davis was the vice president of sales. When this was actually being drawn out, Paul's representative, Norm Goldman, was looking over his shoulder, and because it was not a corner speaker, he suggested that this would be Heresy coming from Paul Klipsch. And so it was the Heresy. However, it did not publicly use the name Heresy in the first few years of production due to a large Baptist content in our corporate employee structure. Then in the early 60s, we came out of the closet with the word Heresy. Here we have a very early version of the Cornwall. You'll notice that the cosmetic treatment is very similar to the earlier Shorthorn. The Cornwall debuted at the New York Audio Fair in 1959. It had a sign on top of it that said, "As yet unnamed, any suggestions?" They got several suggestions, but when they got home, they really didn't like any of them. Bell Klipsch then piped up and said, well, if it can go along a wall and it can be used in the corner, we should just call it a Cornwall. Sometimes you have to go with your wife. The La Scala was designed in 1963 for the performing arts. Some of the early users were Bob Dylan, Peter, Paul and Mary, Johnny Mathis, and the Rockefeller Center in New York. We also sold one to Winthrop Rockefeller in the mid-60s for his Arkansas gubernatorial campaign. This particular unit is a very rare unit. There were 28 of these built, and it's much smaller. Paul referred to it as the Runt La Scala. One of the outliers in this room is a Carlson Exponential slot speaker from the mid-1950s. This speaker was highly advertised as a major breakthrough in sound. We actually respect it enough to use it as a speaker stand for the Rundelscala. The outlandish claims are probably an early instigator of Paul's term bullshit. This cabinet contains a selection of the drivers that Klipsch has used over the years. We have represented Stevens, Electro Voice, we have some University, Jensen, a variety of drivers. On top of the case, we have a couple of the early crossover networks. These coils Paul wound himself, and this happens to be his homemade coil winding apparatus. It has a counter for turns, has a few notations on the side of how many networks he could get out of a 50-pound roll of wire. Here we have a variety of electronic items. Starting at the top, this is a Fairchild phono preamp equalizer. This probably was used at the 1958 Brussels World's Fair when Paul was demonstrating 3-channel stereo. We have a 3-channel adapter that Paul built and sold for a short period of time. We have a pair of Fairchild phonograph cartridges from the early 50s, and these were moving coil style cartridges. Down on the bottom we have the famous Macintosh 100 and Macintosh 240. Behind it is a Marantz 8B. Behind that is a Blonder tongue equalizer. In the very back here we have Paul's first stereo amplifier, which was actually 2 Fisher mono amplifiers that he bolted together and put a handle on. On top of the case, we have the original pattern that Paul made for our professional K260 horn. We have a series of slides in the archives showing him milling this out on a milling machine. And the last item I'd like to point out is a business card, and this was given to Paul in the mid-90s by Ray Dolby. It is our hope that this collection of audio history has given you some additional insight into Paul Klipsch and his role in the birth of our industry. I share really only one trait with Paul Klipsch, and that is pack rat. He started this museum, and I am compelled to continue it. As with all museums, we have a bunch of stuff in the basement, in the closets, things that we just can't display. As we explore our archives further, it is hoped that we will find additional context for a lot of these items. As a disclaimer, I would like to stress that I am not the last word on most of these items, and we would encourage corrections and additions of information from any of you. It's been a pleasure showing you the museum. Thanks a lot.